Hello everybody and welcome back to the F2 Show. I'm your host Fraser Ford, and joining me on this special edition of the F2 Show, we have Inside F2 editor Laurence Griffin, Motorsport commentator Chris McCarthy, and we have a very special guest on today's show, VAR Formula 2 driver JM Correa. JM, firstly, great to have you with us, as you say, for this special edition. Just back from Melbourne, aren't you? Is any jet lag? How are you feeling?
Definitely a bit of jet lag. First of all, thanks guys for having me on. Pleasure to be here. And just arrived to Miami a few days ago. Kind of getting back into it, seeing my family, getting a bit of rest, and getting ready for the next one. I think the season is in full swing for us, so there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes at the moment.
Bit of a break now, obviously, between Melbourne and Baku. What's your plan for the break? Of training, obviously?
Yeah, quite a bit of training, a bit of traveling as well. And in my case, I have Portimao next weekend in the WEC Championship. So it's going to be my first endurance race this year. So a bit of prep for that as well, and some excitement creeping in already, yeah.
Good stuff. And I know from the fan questions, which we'll get onto shortly, there's a few questions around the World Endurance Championship as well. Chris and Laurence, I haven't forgotten about you guys. Don't worry. Chris, let's come to you first. Not in Australia, of course, but any jet lag from having to stay up all night to get your Formula... I know Formula 3 you stayed up for, right?
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. It was fantastic to watch the F3 and F2 over there. Thanks for having me back on as well. I've been loving both championships this season. It's been great to be a part of F3 as well and commentate on the season opener at Bahrain. And I'm looking forward to being back and commentating on some more. But it's great to be back and looking forward to talking about Formula 2.
And remind us for the fans out there, what races are you at this season, Chris, in terms of in the comms box for Formula 3? So,
I'll be at Imola, and I'm also going to be doing Barcelona, Silverstone, and then Spa as well. I'm also going to be commentating at the 24-hour Le Mans. So if anyone is there at the circuit, you'll hear me. Really looking forward to being back doing that for the second year.
Yeah, and we're excited to hearing your voice over the TV as well. Laurence, good weekend of action in Melbourne, wasn't it?
Oh, it was fantastic. You just don't know where to look at the best of times in F2. And then, Melbourne in particular threw up some great racing. I think there's always a doubt in everyone's mind when we go to a new track, is it going to deliver? But it certainly did, which was such a relief to see. And I could barely tell you what happened in that feature race. So much went on. It was brilliant. So looking forward to getting into it and into all the chaos that's been happening this season so far.
Definitely. Now, seeing as this weekend's action was down under, we're going to start the show by flipping it upside down, and we're going to start with some fan questions today. So, unsurprisingly, a lot of the fan questions are going to come to you, JM. So, we've had quite a few questions. So, first question is from Timo. Very random one, I'm not going to lie. He says, would you rather have the ability to walk through walls or the ability to shoot cotton buds from your fingertips?
Cotton buns from my fingertips.
Cotton buds. Yeah.
I think I'd rather walk through walls, right? I feel like that's a more practical ability. Yeah, definitely.
You wouldn't fancy shooting cotton buds out of the cockpit to the drivers behind you, no?
I have a feeling they would regulate me if I did that. I would get penalty, so... No, I'd rather just walk straight through the walls of the paddock and save some meters.
Good choice. Okay, Ellie wants to know, who's the biggest prankster on the Formula 2 grid?
Biggest prankster?
Or who's got the best banter?
It could be me. It could be me, actually.
Yeah? You back yourself.
I would love for you to ask that to the other drivers, see if they agree, but I definitely have some good banter. I like to have a laugh, and then I don't take myself too seriously. So, yeah, I'm going to go with myself.
Okay, and we'll one more question from the fan questions. We'll go back to them a bit later. But Tom says, JM, finish the sentence. My teammate, Richard Verschoor, is... And keep it clean as well. Keep it clean.
Very Dutch. Very Dutch guy. And he's
fast.
He's good. Yeah. He's a good teammate.
Good, good, good. You have quite a good relationship. You go back quite far, you guys, right?
We do, yeah. So we began racing when we were around 14 years old, karting already. And then, yeah, we kind of went up the ranks many times in the same categories. I think we raced against each other in GP3 a few years ago. So yeah, we're close. Where we really became good friends was in the Toyota Racing Series in New Zealand, 2018. We were teammates and spent the 5 weeks together, and that's where we started getting along quite well. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we'll come back to some fan questions later, but let's get into some serious questions. James, how would you summarize your season so far? We're 3 rounds in, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty good. It's hard. It's up and downs, challenges that we quite expected. But I really do feel that, first of all, the progress has been great. We have been laying a good foundation together with Van Amersfoort. There's a lot of work we need to do on both of our ends. I'm still getting up to confidence with a car, improving my efficiency with it, and working on getting a whole weekend together, more neatly. But also the team has some work to do, having the car in the window for my driving style more often, and just kind of helping me understand how to best extract the performance out of the car. So we've been working hard together, and I must say I'm very pleased with how we're doing it and how we're moving forward. And already we have shown really good potential on both cars, as a team. In I would say every weekend there has been many moments where we're really competitive. So that is positive. And like you mentioned before, it's great to have Richard in the team as well with experience he carries, and he was already quite competitive last year with Trident. So he brings in a lot of feelings that we need to be aware of on what he needs from the car to be quicker, and so far it's worked out well, and we have a great working relationship inside the team.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, in fact, you said it earlier on in the podcast, actually. We haven't had you on the podcast this season so far.
Yeah.
What have you made of the season so far? Obviously, yes, 3 rounds in.
It's been fantastic. I think the racing overall, we've had a lot of variety in teams being on the podium, a lot of variety in drivers being on the podium, and lots of different winners already. It's been very unpredictable. If I had to give it one word, it's no drivers really running away with it yet. And I think that's what you want to see in a championship as a fan, isn't it? As a neutral. So yeah, it's been fantastic to follow, and I think to have Australia on the calendar for the first time was absolutely amazing. I'm sure JM can tell us a little bit more about what that experience was like, but I can only imagine that must have been fantastic for all the drivers as well as challenging. But when they were racing, I really think it lived up to expectations. So yeah, I think it's been a brilliant start, and long may it continue.
JM, did you enjoy Melbourne? Were you happy for Formula 2 to go back there again?
Yeah, I did. I was very excited for it. I had been to Australia once before, and always wanted to go back. So I was quite looking forward to the weekend, and it did not disappoint. First of all, the track, it's a proper track, man. It's so cool, fast, technical, sketchy in some places. It's possible to overtake and have good racing. So I was really impressed by it, and then just the whole city, the atmosphere. It really feels like the entirety of Melbourne kind of stops and is there just for the event that weekend, which is pretty cool to see. The fans, they're dedicated, man. They know every F2 driver. They're there from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. waiting to get autographs. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. My only complaint is the 5 days it took me to get rid of the jet lag, because that was tough. But no, it was amazing. A really, really great experience, and I'd be thrilled to go back there every year.
How was the experience qualifying? Because obviously you turn up, you do practice, and you quali in such heavy rain. How do you go about that as a driver, trying to work out where the grip is on a street circuit like that?
So yeah, it was interesting because first time obviously in the wet in this track, but also in my case, first time in the wet in this car with these 18-inch tires as well. So that was really a lot of discovering going on, and Really, I think my approach was kind of like, go out there, you have a few laps, just send it, like what are you gonna do? I couldn't really give myself the luxury of, being 5 seconds off in the beginning and building up to it safely. So I just kind of went out there and found the limit as soon as I could and risked it a bit. And we had a few close calls, but we were very competitive in the wet. In the end, we got a bit hurt. Well, not a bit. We got massively hurt by the red flag that Victor caused in the end. I couldn't complete a lap on my second set. But we were supposed to be around P7, P8 if that would have happened. So we were pretty pleased with that. And I must say that the track was also pretty cool in the wet. What was interesting was most of the lines were just following the fully dry line. In some circuits you have to do a wet line going wide on entry, etc. Melbourne was pretty much wet, dry line the whole way, and just kind of hoping that the car sticks.
How do you prepare for a race that when the championship's never been there before? Because I guess as a team, the team had no data to go off. So in the sim, what were you using as a reference?
So we have the track model in the sim. We have the car model in the sim. So you are able to do laps in a virtual F2 around the track, and really that's the only preparation you get. Basically get your references. You have already the correct gear ratios in the sim, so that's very accurate. So you know exactly which gear you're going to be using in each corner. You know pretty much where you're going to be braking for each corner as well, and the sort of speeds you're carrying. Then what I think is more complex than that and more complicated to get is the actual setup of the car. The engineers will tell you, well, guys, what kind of car do you think you need to be fast in the circuit? And it's like, man, I don't know. You kind of start judging. Okay, we have quite a few high-speed corners, so we probably need something that is stable in high speed. But we also don't want to sacrifice rotation in low speed because there's a very slow third sector. So you kind of start making this sort of calculation in your head, maybe a car like Barcelona would be something similar like that, would be good because the track is similar in some ways. But it's always a bit of a guess, and then you get there in FP and it feels completely different than the sim. Then in quali it rains, and then in the races you're like, why did I even go to the sim? This is totally different, and you're just kind of like cowboying your way around the weekend and making the best out of it.
Yeah, how much have the cars changed from your debut in 2019 to obviously coming back into the car this season? Have they changed a lot, or
not a lot? The tires, the 18-inch wheels change. They do change quite a bit more than you'd expect of how the whole car behaves, the dynamics of it, because the tires are such low profile now that the whole car just has become a lot more stiff. The tires are more difficult to manage and to feel in certain ways. And I dare to say that the car is a little bit harder physically to drive as well because of the added stiffness. It's really quite tricky. And when the car snaps, it really snaps. I think you've seen that change also with F1 when you compare it this year to the previous with the low profile wheels. They were more forgiving. So it's a similar effect in F2. But then, the systems of the car, the steering wheel is the same. The basic workings of it is similar. But for me, it just feels like there was such a long time between my half season I did in F2 in 2019 and now, and I did so much in between, including 2 seasons in F3, that I don't really find myself going back and thinking about F2 in 2019 when I'm driving the car now. It's really kind of like a fresh start every time I go to a track.
You've driven for some great teams, Prema, ART, obviously in the junior categories. How does VAR compare to the other teams that you've driven for previously?
It's a much younger team. Still, I would say less established. Obviously, in these categories, there's a lot of things that we're working on with the team and trying to help both me and Richard, trying to help the team with the experience we have in, this is kind of the process we need. This is how we can be more efficient altogether. But I must say that the attitude is there and the commitment is there from the guys, which is amazing. The working environment we have is really, really good, efficient. I know that we are a threat to the other teams, and I am really confident that we're going to turn some heads, because nobody really expects any team to do well on their second season in such a competitive category, especially when you have so little running time in the season. You rely very heavily on older data, previous experiences. So we're kind of arriving there like, hey, we know what we have. Let's believe in our process and make the best out of it. And it's working, and the guys are doing a great job. So it's a very exciting project to be a part of, I must say.
Yeah, for sure. One of the questions we had come in from the fans was Sarah on Instagram, who says, "Hi, JM, what's it like to be back in Formula 2? And what's a big goal for you personally this year? Yeah, what is the goal? Is it podiums? Do you think you can compete for wins? What's the goal?"
My biggest goal is when the year end comes, I want to look back and be like, wow, I've learned so much through the year. I started at this level, I've ended it here, and I just feel like I've become better out of this. And whatever I do next year, if it's another season of F2, if it's F1, if it's IndyCar, whatever, like I'm more ready. But I also have obviously goals in terms of results. I think podiums are very much possible, even a win. To be fair, I think we have the level, I have the experience and the maturity to do it, and we just need to put it together. So we'll see what comes, but I have high hopes, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a good year in that sense. Yeah.
Is this the best version of JM Correa that we've seen?
Yes, it is the best version of myself, both on and off the track. I'm enjoying this season deeply. For me to drive around the world, doing F2, doing WEC, it's honestly already a dream come true. So I'm aware of that, and I'm thankful to be aware of that and be able to take all of that in. And then on track, I am just as competitive as I've ever been, hungrier than I've ever been as well, and more motivated. And I feel like I'm really doing a pretty good job, and I still have so much more potential to come, it's a good thing, because once that starts coming out, I feel like there will be a big step forwards. Yeah.
I was just going to ask quickly, Jem. You mentioned about driving all around the world. What was it like? What was it like going to Jeddah as well? How is that track to drive? Because that looks incredibly fast out there. To just tell us what it's like both to drive and race around there.
Jeddah is absolutely bonkers, man. It's I did my first lap in free practice, and I was like, "Holy shoot! Like, what is this place?" The sim cannot prepare you for what it is, and just how cool it is, and it's so sketchy. It's like you kind of finish a push lap and you get this surge of adrenaline because you didn't put it in the wall, and you're like, woo, like you feel alive, like if you just tame the beast. Yeah. Pretty cool. Very demanding physically. The hardest circuit I've ever driven. I mean, my arms, neck, everything, I was pretty fatigued by the end of the weekend. And it's just a track where you need a lot of confidence, a lot of self-trust. And at certain times, if you want to be fast, you got to kind of be willing to put it in the wall, like kind of if I lose the car, I'm in the wall, you got to be okay with it. You can't really drive that track and be fast if you're holding back, which it's pretty cool. So enjoyable. And I must say also, as an event as a whole, it was better than what people make it seem to be. I had heard that it was really not nice and uncomfortable. It was not the experience I had. I actually quite enjoyed it.
Laurence, I think you got a couple of fan questions to read out, haven't you?
Yes, we do. Alicia on Twitter asks, what are the differences for you between driving your current F2 car and the LMP2 prototype? And which racing weekend feels tougher physically and mentally, and which do you prefer?
Just a few questions.
just a few in there.
So the differences between the two cars are, in terms of feeling inside the cockpit. First of all, the LMP2 is a closed cockpit, so there's a lot less visibility, which actually shouldn't be underestimated. You need to get used to the bad visibility you have in the LMP2. Then you have power steering in the LMP2, so it's much lighter to drive, a lot less physical, more forgiving as well. In terms of driving style, it's less aggressive than the F2. The F2 is really a car that you kind of have to fight with it. When you do a push lap in quali, you're throwing the car around. It's fighting back, and that's the way to be fast in this car. The LMP2 is quite the opposite. You have to be very smooth and treat it nicely. The car doesn't like to be driven. And then in the weekend, well, I haven't done a WEC weekend this year yet. I have my experience from ELMS last year, which I think it's pretty similar. It's a lot more chill in endurance, because you have teammates. You have, I think, three FPs in WEC, if I'm correct. So you have a bit more time to get up to speed, to understand what's going on. Yeah, just a different approach. But then the actual races in endurance, they are pretty intense. And that was something that caught me by surprise last year. Even if it's a 4-hour race in ELMS, it's basically a 4-hour sprint race. And every stint you're doing, every lap you're doing, you are absolutely on the limit. It's not like, oh, I'm saving tires. There's actually less tire management, I would say, in endurance than in F2. Because in F2, the tires are pretty bad. You need to manage them well, or you're going to fall off a cliff. Like you guys saw Bahrain, what happened to most of the grid, You need to be smart about it. In LMP2, you're basically trying to get past the traffic and manage that as fast as possible. Maybe save a little bit of fuel here and there, but you're pushing. It's intense, and it gets hot and sweaty inside that cockpit. So overall, I would say probably a weekend in F2. I'm more tired after a weekend in F2, just because of the amount of pressure you have of being the only driver in that car. It's all on you. You have 2 push laps in quali. It's really intense.
And then sort of off the back of that, we've got another one. The JM Correa Hungarian fan page asks, how difficult is it to adapt to those 2 different cars quickly? Between weekends, going from one style to the other. You just said with the open cockpit, closed cockpit. What's that challenge like?
For me, it's not super challenging. I kind of switch my mentality more in terms of like procedures and things I have to do in the F2 cockpit and things I have to do in the LMP2, warm-up procedures, how the electronics work, the steering wheel, etc. But then once I'm driving, I know which feeling I'm trying to get in either car. I just search for that feeling, and then I kind of let my instincts take over, and that usually works out pretty good with me. I think I'm quite good at just jumping around, and like I'm quick, and I'm straight up on the pace. So that's so far how I've done it. We'll see how it goes this year.
You never pull up in the F2 car and open the door?
No, but sometimes I try to get out of the LMP2 and not open the door, and I hit my head. So that's the type of things that you need to be aware of. Yeah.
You spoke about some of the endurance stuff there, Jem. I mean, how much are you looking forward to the 24 Hour of Le Mans? I mean, it's the centenary year. It's already sold out. It's sold out in a record time. I think it's the most ever fans they're going to have there. How much are you looking forward to racing in that this year with Prema?
Very much so. I think it's going to be a spectacle. Le Mans is very special, but yeah, this is a special edition, and I also heard that they are sold out like they've never been before.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a way for me to make my debut on it, right? Like, I'm just kind of coming in cold turkey, not a lot of experience, never done a 24-hour race before. Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge, but I love a challenge. I'm really excited, and in general, I'm really thankful to have this opportunity through the year to do both categories and keep adding to my experience and taking it all in.
What is the longest race you've done, out of interest?
4 hours.
With that in European Le Mans? Oh, wow. Well, just plus 20. I mean, you'll do longer this year, though, right, with the World Endurance?
I'll put it this way. I've never had to take in a nap in a race in between stints before. So that's going to be something new for me. Yeah.
It's quite hard to sleep there.
I can imagine.
I can tell you from experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Couple more questions then. So Libs on Twitter wants to know, would you ever be interested in racing in series such as IndyCar or Formula E?
For sure. I'm pretty open with my possibilities. I'm trying to get to F1. I'm gonna do my best in F2 and see where that takes me. But I'm very open to looking at other opportunities. IndyCar is really a category that I follow very closely, and I would love to go there and become a part of that series. I just think it's so cool. The level is super high. It has that same competitive edge and kind of unpredictability that you find in categories like F2, which I quite like. And you can have a great professional career in it. Also, endurance, obviously, is on the table as a sort of career path. Formula E is a category that I haven't really had any sort of contact with. Never been asked to try a car, but I would definitely be open to it if the right opportunity arises. Yeah.
And last one, so Sean asks, how do you look after your mental well-being throughout the season? I think that's quite a good question, to be fair.
Yeah, so there's different aspects to your mental well-being. So psychologically, it's probably the most important one, and you gotta have people you can talk to. Like I think I'm a huge advocate for mental health and getting rid of the stigma around mental health, especially with males and like high level sport. There's this, you guys know what I'm talking about. I feel like everybody, whether you're a high level sportsman or you're an accountant, you should have a psychologist every once in a while and just have someone to talk to. It's the same for us, we're just normal people doing the best we can at our job and dealing with issues both in personal life and professionally. So that is important for me. I'm very open. I have people in my support network that I talk to. And then also mentally, how you deal with the pressure through a season is very important. I think it's something that comes with a bit of maturity and experience, where you start to realize the pressure and the expectations are always going to be there, in this sport, you go out on the track and there's maybe 20, 30 people outside in the team, sponsors, whatever, that are all counting on you to perform and do your job. If you don't manage that sort of pressure and expectations well, it's gonna bury you. It's so easy to just be like, oh my God, like this is all on my shoulders. For me, that's just something that I'm like, yeah, like it is what it is. It's part of the sport, and I just have to do my job. And if I do a good job, great. If I mess it up, I'll learn from it and we'll go to the next one. But it takes a bit of practice to get there, and I still have to deal with it. I'm positive. I'm a positive guy, but sometimes I arrive to a racetrack and I'm like, oh my God, I'm really nervous today. I'm really anxious. And I just talk to the people that are with me, and we work through it and get out there and do our best.
You've got such a great perspective on it. It's so nice to hear you speaking so sort of openly and like self-reflecting like that. Do you think this being your second stint in F2 and having more experience and everything you've been through helps you give you that perspective to sort of to understand what you're going through, to manage the mental health and to perform better eventually?
Yeah, I think it's that, but I think mainly the accident and the perspective that gave me in life in general helps me massively with it, because it just made me grow a lot, and kind of it gives me this outlook and maturity that maybe you would find in someone a lot older, and I really feel lucky to have that, because I feel, one, it makes me a happier person in general. Like, I'm not so fussed about smaller things. I can see what truly matters in front of me. But two, it also shows me that, at the end of the day, we all have our issues. We're all dealing with stuff. And if I make a mistake, it's not going to be the end of the world. It doesn't define me as a person. I'm here to race and try my best. And I'm going to fight as hard as possible. But, I kind of embrace the challenge of it. It's something that I love, getting to a track and having butterflies in my stomach before quali. Maybe in that moment you don't enjoy it so much, but overall the experience, it's really what I love about being a race car driver, because you're just living on the edge all the time.
Jem, it's been a fascinating insight. Thank you. Just before you go, if you had to pick any car, any track, any teammate, and any team principal, past or present, what, where, and who are you picking?
Oh man, okay. Any car. What is the last Mercedes, the last World Championship that Lewis won with Mercedes? The W17, 18? The really fast one, I think it's like the 2018 spec. Mercedes. Teammate, maybe Lewis Hamilton, since he was the fastest guy in that car. Team principal, that's a good question. Who would I have as a team principal? I would love to have like James Hunt as a team principal. I think that would be very fun.
Nice.
Yeah, and track, probably Spa.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you, James Hunt, and Lewis all in the same garage. That would be an atmosphere. I'd like to
That
see
would
that.
be funny. Yeah, I mean Lewis, because I really wanna learn from him. James to bring in a bit of no BS and fun into the garage, and then that car is so fast, and Spa is the track I love, so perfect scenario.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, that's all we got time for today. A huge thank you to JM for joining us on today's show. And JM, best of luck for the rest of the season. And Laurence and Chris, been a pleasure as usual as well. Thanks for coming on again. If you have enjoyed the show, make sure you give it a like, get involved in the conversation on our social media channels, and subscribe for more Formula 2 content. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.